Loading. This is the Marketing Mavericks Podcast, a fun place of conversation with business owners from different industries at all different stages. We're shining a spotlight on what works and what doesn't when it comes to getting their brand's messaging out in this cluttered social media world. We'll also touch on marketing hacks, trends, and of course, AI. I'm Andrea Chase, your host, and I'm so excited to have you here. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Andrea Chase, your host of the Marketing Mavericks Podcast. I'm so excited to be back with you today. We are very lucky to have Dortha Hise on the show. Dortha is an international bestselling author, founder-in-chief Overwhelm, solver of Summit to Your Success, a full-service coaching firm specializing in helping clients use tech as a tool to simplify, not overwhelm. After enduring multiple devastating personal losses, Dortha also lost her voice literally. She thought it was a simple case of laryngitis or bronchitis, and as it turns out, it was not simple. She was diagnosed with a neurological condition called abductor spasmodic dysphonia, ABSD. ABSD prevented Dortha from using the phone or speaking normally or being easily heard in a room with a lot of ambient noise. While this presented challenges to Dortha, she is grateful for this experience as it has heightened her sense of hearing, most importantly, her ability to listen deeply. Always the positive thought leader, Dortha remained a high achiever through circumstances that would have knocked many down without feeling overwhelmed. She understood the mindset of high achievers fully and how to optimize their businesses for maximum performance. However, she observed that the overwhelm did not always go away. After going on a 3-day backpacking trip in 2015, she could fully experience the healing power that nature brought to her. She had done it naturally with techniques developed both strategically and intuitively. She set an intention to be open to whatever she was meant to receive on that trip. And when she returned home, she understood that to be what expanded her resilience and that the final act of letting go brought the ultimate antidote to overwhelm. Dortha, now a certified coach, teaches others to do the same in her Choose Your Own Adventure healing portal, bringing about entire mindset shifts and personal transformation of those who lead, helping them serve the world at their best. A very, very warm welcome, Dortha. So excited to see you today. How are things going in your neck of the woods?
Well, thanks, Andrea, first of all, for inviting me to be here with you and for getting the opportunity to share with your audience and how things are going. It's a sunny day here in Northern California, and we're having a little bit of a cooling trend, so we're kind of enjoying that. And just excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I'm equally, if not more excited to have the convo with you. You are quickly becoming one of my favorite people in my network. Truly, honestly. And like I shared with you offline before we started, I mean, I knew some of your story, but I didn't know the entire realm of what brought you to where you are today. So I think you do amazing work and you always bring your personal passion for being in nature and the outdoors to your business. So let's talk a little bit about what is the business. Can you share a little bit about who your audience is and what kind of work you're doing these days?
Yeah, I work with high-achieving women entrepreneurs mostly, and they are typically in a place in their business where they are ready to up-level, or they are in the process of up-leveling, and they're at this threshold where they either keep hitting their head on their desk or the wall or whatever's close to them. And that is a function of them knowing that they can't keep doing what they've been doing and be able to do that up leveling. So they know that they're in a place where they need to bring on some support. They have some trust issues probably. They have maybe some abandonment issues. That's actually something that is a personal touch point for me, and that's how I actually can work with and relate to my clients is generally starts with a little bit of mindset work and around knowing that your team isn't going to leave you, knowing that your team is going to get the things done that they say they will get done, and also empowering my clients. This is a big one, empowering my clients to not micromanage, not be a helicopter entrepreneur and hover over the work being done. Trusting that when you hand it off, it's going to get done, and it might not be the way you would do it, but it will be a way that it is done, and it is functional, and it does represent you and your brand. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I think as women entrepreneurs, I don't know if I've met a woman who's in business who hasn't been a little bit of a victim, maybe I'll say victim or subject to the micromanagement gene, right? So
For sure.
what do you think is one of the biggest reasons that your clients are experiencing that feeling that they need to micromanage everything?
Well, I think the easy answer is they're control freaks, right? Most of them
Yeah.
are self-admitted type A type personalities, and they know that they could do it themselves, and it'll take them 5 hours, which would take somebody that they hire, an hour maybe. They want to be able to do it themselves. They want to be in control and in power of the whatever it is, and giving up that piece feels like relinquishing control. And it's not anything about relinquishing control. And this is one of the big things that I like to talk about around delegation, which is delegating actually empowers your team to take on more ownership. It also empowers you because that's going to free you up from doing those things that you probably don't like doing anyway, let's be honest, to getting you back into the things that you do enjoy. So it's really kind of a mindset shift around, okay, yes, I know I'm a control freak. Right? You can say that you're a control freak and be like a recovering control freak.
There you go.
And, just start with something small. That's the thing that I like to tell my clients. Start with something small. You don't have to hand everything over all at once. Start with something small and start building a little bit of confidence, and then add another thing, and then add another thing. It doesn't have to be everything in your business all at once.
I love that. It must be so beautiful to see that transformation from your end of the desk there, to see somebody come through your door and be experiencing those troubles. And like you said, probably a lot of type A personalities. So there is deep-rooted stuff going on there, but it doesn't mean that you can't have tools or practices in place to be able to release a little bit of that. So do you exclusively work with women, Dortha? That I'm not 100% clear on, actually.
Well, that's what my marketing says. However, I do have several men clients. So it's not specifically just women. That just tends to be who I know best because I am a woman, who I understand better. However, I think that really deep understanding of women has helped me, with the men that I work with, because it helps them in their relationships with women in their lives. So it's actually kind of a multi-pronged thing.
I love that. Yeah, I'm the same way as you too, right? I mean, we use the women-owned businesses piece in our marketing because that's who I love working with. That's what a lot of my network's made up of as well. But I want to make it clear too, and I have to say this sometimes, it doesn't mean I won't work with it. I'm not like a man hater or anything like that. I have to preface things with that because I think gentlemen in my network go, okay, I'm not the right fit. And I'm going, no, that's not what we mean. But yeah, that's interesting. So who are some of these individuals? Are you industry agnostic with the work that you're doing, or do you work with people in specific industries or niches?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that at this point in my career. I've been in business for 20 years. I think I have shared that with you. And
Clap. Yay, 20 years. That's so impressive. Wow. Congrats.
Thank you. So when I started, initially I worked a lot with service providers, so speakers, authors. They didn't necessarily have a storefront or a product suite, so to speak. And as the years have gone on, and when the pandemic happened, I actually got really clear about who my clients were, which is how the high achieving part came in. I forgot to mention SMART. People who generally gravitate in my world are like lawyers or PhDs, like very educated, very smart people. And I think that's one of the things that gets in their way is because they're so smart. They're like, I can do this. I should be able to do this. And they kind of spin their wheels. And I feel like I have kind of an inside track with that because my former life as a paralegal, especially around,
Right.
the community of lawyers. I tend to really understand that personality very well. PhDs happened specifically during the pandemic, and I actually was working with a startup, and I worked with a psychiatrist and
Oh,
helped
cool.
them do like amazing things in their businesses. One was helping them get a business off the ground, and the other was I actually helped him to monetize his YouTube channel, which was amazing because it was like right time, right place with the pandemic and the tips and tools he was using. He took my advice, which is another thing that some clients aren't quite willing to do. So, like I'll give the advice, but if they don't take it, I can't do anything for them necessarily. This person was actually very open to taking my suggestions, and I told him that I thought video would be really great. So he started doing that. We put it on Facebook, and then we also repurposed onto YouTube. And then next thing you know, boom, rocket, taken off on YouTube.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. That's really interesting. And I didn't know that as well, that you worked with some academics and things like
Yeah.
that. And of
Yeah.
course, our former lives and careers always play a role, don't they?
They do.
It's funny. I'm not sure why you left the industry of paralegal, but it's funny that it's sort of in a different way coming back into your current life.
Yeah, I left that world because I have far too sensitive of a heart and a soul to be in a high stress litigation environment. And it actually took
See that.
me applying to law school 3 years in a row, getting rejected 3 years in a row, and finally having that moment where I was like, okay, God, like, what's the plan here? And I got a very loud and clear message, like, stop pushing. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, that's what I'm doing here. I see. Okay. And like once I did kind of this number where I like pulled back, put my hands up, and I was like, okay, like let's figure it out. Things got a lot easier.
Yeah, sometimes we resist, right? But sometimes we're also, I think, not maybe ready to receive what the universe or whatever one believes is bringing forth. Sometimes we need it presented more than once, and you're not alone in that. I've been
Knock
there
you in the back
too.
of the head.
Yep. I literally was doing a talk about my former venture pro cabbie, and I mentioned that, that many times I was faced with the notion, do we keep continuing on? Do we cease operations? But I was very resistant. So sometimes we're just not ready for it yet. Um, how are you, because we're here, Marketing Mavericks, of course, how are you marketing to these individuals? Are you doing a lot of formal marketing yourself? Is it word of mouth? Like, because you've been in business for a long time now. So how does that marketing channel work for you where you're sitting today?
Well, I don't know if you'll believe, most of my career has been built on word of mouth, and I haven't had to do a lot of formal marketing. And so I've been kind of this year like dabbling into some things to try and market a little bit more.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, most everything that I have built has been from referrals, word of mouth, people in my network. I have a very large network of people on the socials, and people
Hmm.
know what I do and how I can help
Hmm.
people. And so people aren't even my clients, and they're like, "Oh, you need Dortha in your life." So
Oh,
it's like
that's
this
incredible.
very, very cool, very organic thing that I've been able to build over the 20 years that I've been in business. And I'm incredibly grateful for it, and for the people who, continue to support me in my mission and how I help people. So
That's incredible. But you know what? That also really speaks to who you are, I think, as a person and as a professional, because obviously, your work and who you are speaks for itself. And people wouldn't be engaging with that word of mouth sort of practice if they didn't see something good coming from it. So I
yeah,
think that that's great. And that's what we want to do on this pod as well. I mean, it's not just all traditional curated marketing. That has its place, obviously,
for
where I'm
sure.
sitting, and I might be a little bit biased about that, but that's not the whole piece to the puzzle, is it? And things were very different 20 years ago when you started out. I mean, we
Yeah,
didn't even have social media really back then. So
yeah.
very, very different animal. Are you the one that, now that you said you're kind of dabbling a little bit more into it, are you the one that's creating the content yourself for your channels, or do you have a team that's helping you with that? Do you mind me asking?
No, I have been a little of both. primarily myself doing a lot of the creation pieces. I have worked with a few people over the past couple of years to help me create things.
Mm-hmm.
I did work with somebody for a long while that was helping me to curate content, and it just wasn't a great fit at some point, like you were saying, when you resist the change and it comes at you in different ways. This was one of those relationships. I loved the person dearly. It just was no longer a good fit, and they weren't listening to what I wanted. And I'm like, hey, like in this capacity, I'm actually the client, and you need to be listening to what I'm putting into this. And I didn't feel heard or valued what I was asking for in seeing what I was, asking for and what I was getting back. So it was a difficult conversation for me, which is, if you know me and you've been in my world, it's hard for me to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's not easy. But it has to be the right fit. And I think that that's a really valid lesson as well, is that it's great to engage with outside help and to find an agency or a person, but it's like, maybe going on a date, right? You're going to have to interview or kind of vet some of those people. And it doesn't mean that they're bad at their respective work or industry, but they just might not be the right fit. It's a very personal thing in a way, even though it's business, but you're taking a lot of personal things from that professional and you're putting them out and curating it in a way to present it to the world. And sometimes it just doesn't jive, unfortunately. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
I also think, we grow in our business, and like we grow as human beings, and who I am today is not who I was when I started my business. Was
Right.
who I am 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? My
Mm-hmm.
husband has a theory, 10 years, we're kind of a different person than
Interesting.
we were. Yeah. And I look at that and I'm like, we've been married for 20 years as well. And I look at that like, yeah, I'm a different person than when you and I first started dating.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that I'm a better person, right? That I've enhanced myself and I've changed and I've grown. And I think the same about business. Like, who we serve may still be the same, and how we show up is a little bit different each, iteration of our business. And hopefully it's for the better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of merit to what you're saying. I mean, if we never evolve, then we're going to stay stuck where we are. And that, people want to see growth, I think, as well. From a marketing perspective, this authenticity word is being thrown around kind of like candy. When you really get down to the root of it, it's very important. But I think people can really struggle with how to present that authentic self, their authentic self to the world. I think it's really tough. So, just this is a little off the cuff, but what is your favorite channel to show up on today?
I think I want to say LinkedIn, except I'm still a little timid over there, to be 100% honest. I still feel like Facebook is my like comfort level and like where I have gained the most traction.
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of my fall to like safe place. And I feel like LinkedIn is a place where I'm getting better, and I have met some really amazing connections like yourself. In that space. So I feel like there's more opportunity in the LinkedIn community and world at large, for me and my business.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. I think LinkedIn, I too, I was very hesitant, I guess I would say a couple of years back, even in the middle of the pandemic. I had LinkedIn and I had some connections, but how often did I really go there, right? And the more you get on there, the more I'm actually really loving it as well, because I find that there's not, for me personally, I don't find there's as much noise on LinkedIn as some of the other platforms, depending why you're there. But if you're there like us as a professional, that's probably the kind of content that you want to engage with when you're visiting that platform. Whereas sometimes when we're on Facebook and IG and TikTok, those platforms have their place and they're great, but there's so many ads that somebody can become very overly stimulated and get very distracted, I think. So,
yes.
Yeah.
We can just leave it at that.
we will leave it at that. So kind of to shift a little bit, obviously sharing our brand and putting our messaging out into the world is really about that storytelling the storytelling piece, right? So how or what kind of advice, I guess I would ask you, would you have for somebody who's maybe newer in their industry, starting out in business? They know they need to kind of get their messaging out there. What advice would you have for them about storytelling and brand messaging?
Well, fun story that I recently dusted off and hadn't told in ages was a time that I was a contestant in the Miss Illinois pageant to be Miss USA.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know this.
So, so first of all, like I'm not your typical beauty pageant person, right? But my parents, when I was a kid, had put me in them to help with some socialization, to like help because I was an only child. Long story, but I have siblings, but I grew up an only child. So it's one of those weird dynamics where they were really trying to help me just like kind of be more extroverted. And in that capacity, when I went into this pageant, there were so many things that I learned. I was 18 in college, and I learned so many things that I didn't know. And the lesson that I took from this experience was watching this woman run around her friend with a roll of duct tape, and she was like running around doing her chest, right? And she was like with the duct tape,
right,
getting her breasts in place for her swimsuit. I am over here trying to buckle my shoe, right? And I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on here. I'm just like over here on the floor trying to buckle my shoe. And I'm watching this going, what is happening? And of course, the years of insight later is that, she was doing that so that things didn't move when she walked on stage, and a variety of other things that if you're out there in the pageant world, about. I likened that experience to my business, and the gift that I bring to my clients is helping them discover the things that they don't know. Mm-hmm. And I would recommend to anyone that is just starting out in their business, like tapping into the why did you get into this, but finding those little gems of stories that you can pull from your youth or your high school or college or some other experience that is a direct line to how you help the people you help. It's kind of a big loop because that duct tape, I actually posted a photo of me with a thing of duct tape.
Oh, really?
And
I need to go check that out.
That's how I shared it. And the story is a little bit longer, in the post, of course, but it was just like that. It was a very involved story, and it painted quite the picture because, well, like this woman is running around with duct tape. What is happening? And my little 18-year-old mind just couldn't understand what exactly was going on. And like, why would she be doing that? And okay. So like we all went out on stage and I'm like, okay, great. Like, why is she? I don't understand.
That's too funny. I love that. You are a great storyteller. And so that question was actually, seriously though, that question was very well pointed to you as well, because what I'm thinking of when you're telling that story is I'm visualizing you standing there, and I have the perfect picture in my mind of you watching somebody being duct taped around their chest. But I think that also is really applicable when we are storytelling, is to be really descriptive. Give those details. Let people have their mind go and visualize it really well. And I think that those can be some of the most powerful stories that we tell, and also the most powerful kind of messages that we put out. And I really love the idea of making that comparison between, or that advice rather, of looking at something in your youth, in your childhood, and a lesson that you learn, and how is this relating to your business today? I think that we're probably, if we all did that exercise and we let our minds go, we probably would come up with things that we haven't thought of in 10, 20 years,
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps to tap into the creativity as well. Like when we lean into that childlike wonder, we were kids, we weren't afraid to ask why, but why, and how come, and what about this, right? We were full of questions. And then as we get older, like we find that asking questions sometimes is uncomfortable, and we get answers that we don't want. In this case, I feel like it can be fun because those answers can actually help formulate and shape and direct. And so, yeah, I think it can be really fun and a good way to lean into creativity in your business as well.
Well, I'm definitely going to take that from this conversation, amongst other things. And maybe I'll have to do that myself, because I think it might be really curious to see what comes out. as you know, you and I could talk for hours. Like seriously, like literally. But this is we almost are actually up for time, to be honest with you. I know. I'm a little bummed too. But I want to close it off and give you the floor to share. Has anybody ever given you some marketing advice, or have you ever acquired some marketing advice from your own experiences walking this entrepreneurial path that you would like to share with the audience? Just a really great tip about marketing or branding or messaging.
Yeah, I think I kind of have a piece to touch on both branding and marketing. One, when you're branding and getting yourself out there, always make sure that your profile photo has a picture of you, and that it's relatively current. I can't tell you how many times I've had a Zoom call with someone. They booked a call, and I go check out their socials. I get on with them, and I'm like, whoa, you were not what I was expecting. Like, 180 shift.
Yeah, it's happened to us all.
So I would say just make sure that your branding is consistent, and that goes also with your logo and your banners and all of that. Make sure things are consistent across all the platforms. The piece about marketing that I would say is, explore and try things out. See what fits you. There are so many different things that you can try. I personally feel like social proof is a big one for a lot of people, because people can self-identify with someone else's words. So if they're saying, oh, Andrea's great at her craft and I really appreciated and felt really supported and XYZ, and I read that and I like to be somebody who feels supported in my relationships I hire people out for, then I'm going to say, oh, well, like Andrea might be the person for me to have a conversation with because I resonate with that social proof of that testimonial. So I think the power of having that, and I would also throw in, like we are right now in this conversation, having a podcast is a really great way to have a marketing tool that is fun and dynamic and current with the times. So, kudos to you for having it. And I think it's also a great marketing tool to help, just keep yourself out there and keep you regularly posting content.
Those are hot tips. You gave us a few to stew on, so I appreciate you. Lots of golden nuggets. I think that this has been another awesome, fantastic conversation. Thank you so very much again, Dortha, for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. And thanks to the listeners for joining again. Back to the Marketing Mavericks podcast. I wish you all a fantastic day. Catch you next time.